By the third year of a code's lifespan, gymnasts typically have their skills and routines down to a science, perfected to shine on the world stage. With this in mind, I recently watched the entire balance beam final at the 1995 World Gymnastics Championships in Sabae. What I was not expecting was one of the decade's most egregious overscores, one that has somehow slipped under the radar and remained largely unlooked for nearly 30 years. But that ends today. No stone will be left unturned, and when the dust is settled, will another gymnast be pulled out from under the rubble and onto our esteemed and infamous list of robbed goddesses. Всем привет! Меня зовут Wally и добро пожаловать снова на мой канал. So for the most part, this was actually one of the best beam finals I've ever seen in the sense of everyone stayed on the beam. There were no falls or major breaks. The biggest issue was that a few gymnasts came up short, where else but in getting those additional D and E elements to accrue the all-important 10.0 start value. As I mentioned in my video about the 1993 World's Beam Final, each phase of the competition had specific skills required, known as value parts, and for event finals, this consisted of 2 B elements, 1 C element, and 2 D elements. Once this was fulfilled, the gymnast would achieve the maximum 9.4 starting score. The remaining 6/10 to start out of a 10 were earned via the code's bonification system, which was 2-pronged. Half of those, or 3/10, came from connection bonus and linking specific skills of ranked letter categories. Think of it as a formula or equation. The other 3/10 were garnered by performing additional D and E elements. 1/10 for each additional D ahead of the 2 that were required for event finals in this case, and then you got 2/10 for each E element performed. This, of course, is if you fulfilled the value parts. But if you did not, then one of your additional D or E elements could then count as a lower letter that you had missed. So if you had messed up on your C element, which is the case of Oksana Fabrichnova at 93 Worlds, then her D element that she was using for bonus would then count as that C element, which left her 1/10 of a point shorter than she thought she would be. In addition to completing the required value parts in bonus, there were multiple special requirements that had to be fulfilled as well. The most important ones being an acrobatic series, a gymnastics series, and a mixed series consisting of both an acrobatic and a gymnastic element. Each gymnast also had to perform an element close down to the beam. And just to complicate matters further, as an individual element or component of the gymnastic or mixed series, the gymnast is required to show one gymnastic turn of a minimum 360 degrees on one leg, 2, a leap or jump with great amplitude, or the Alessia Dudnik special as I like to call it, because I'm a petty bitch like that, and 3, one gymnastic element with a minimum B value. Now, that's a lot to be cognizant about in less than 90 seconds. The most efficient beam workers were the ones who were able to tick off multiple boxes simultaneously and perhaps fulfilling 1 or 2 of those requirements in one pass. Here is the start list for the final. I did a video on Patreon recapping the 1996 Olympics beam final a few months ago, and you'll notice there's quite a bit of carryover in terms of the athletes competing in both of those meets. So over half of the field also made beam finals in Atlanta. As always, when I'm rejudging these old meets, I am making observations and not pointing out deductions. In these old 10.0 codes, especially the ones prior to 1997, although there was a list of general faults with applicable deductions, in practice, they were almost treated as optional or per each judge's discretion. There were many reasons the whole 10.0 system was overhauled, but this likely was one of them. It's why I often say the judging during this time felt based on vibes. And a big problem with the judging of gymnastics to this very day is the lack of transparency. And that holds true especially now because in large part, or almost entirely, the judging is meant to be objective. The deductions for each routine should be listed just to ensure that they're being consistently applied to all of the gymnasts. The list of deductions for the E-score should be itemized and listed and published after each meet for every gymnast, just to ensure that they're being applied evenly across the board and there's no favoritism or shenanigans going on behind the scenes. Now, will the WTC ever do this? No, because there's favoritism and shenanigans going on behind the scenes. Or at least that's what one could surmise. If perhaps they were a little bit more cynical than I am, I would never do such a thing. A huge thanks as always to Boban1611. He uploaded all of these videos for me to use from German TV. He has done so much work for me and my channel and my Patreon, and I appreciate it so much. He is absolutely amazing. Please go follow him, go show him some love, comment, engage with his videos. Also, he does amazing archive work. He is saving lives, y'all. So with all that said, and it was a lot, let's get this roaster cooking. First up is Qiao Ya from China, and this was her second consecutive year making finals on beam at Worlds. She was one of the favorites the prior year, but had a costly fall and finished in 7th or 8th place. And she is a gorgeous beam worker, very typical of the Chinese. She does one of my favorite combinations that I'll point out. She's going to mount with a layout step out, but right off the bat, it's a significant loss of balance. Here's her required acrobatics series, back handspring, 2 layouts. Nice. She's very exact in all of her movements. Here's her gymnastics series, switch leap, straddle jump. Here, see, these are the little choreographic moves. This is the combination that I'm obsessed with. Split jump to punch front. Oh, so good. She gets 1/10 in special connection bonus for that. Required full turn. Okay, this is the defining moment of the routine. That's a popa, which is a full twisting straddle jump. It was a new element and it was valued at an E. So she was depending on getting credit for that in order for this routine to start out at a 10. All that's left is the dismount, round off tuck double back. Pretty good form, not a cowboy, and just a hop back on the landing. And it's difficult to make beam look natural and for it to have good flow when you have to be focused on completing all of these required elements. But the elements were done well for the most part. The major deduction in the routine was the issue on the mount. And then here on this popa, she has to get all the way around in order to receive credit. As you can see, she's short on it. And so she does not receive credit, and she starts out of a 9.8. Her dismount, again, good form. It's not quite Chen Sui Ting level, but we'll take it. Very nice routine. And they don't show her score, but she received a 9.625. Again, there are 6 judges with the high and low scores thrown out, and the remaining 4 scores are averaged. The judges are allowed to score in increments of 0.05. That likely means she counted 2 9.6s and 2 9.65s. Unfortunately, I looked everywhere. Well, not really. I probably could have looked harder. But I looked enough to try to find the individual judges' scores for this meet, and I just couldn't find them. It's too bad, but it is what it is. Next is Yelena Grosheva from the Russian Federation. She was also in vault finals, where she finished 7th. She's going to do punch front mount, right into a Sabae, nice connection. Maybe not quite quick enough, but it was for 1995 standards. Here's her required acrobatic series, back handspring, layout step out. Ha! Love the flourish on that pose. but not the most difficult acrobatic series. She doesn't get any bonus for it. There's a side somersault, also a new element in the code. It was valued at a D. So gymnastics series, switch leap to wolf jump, well done. That is C plus B, which gets 1/10 in connection bonus. There's that wolf jump again into a chin. Very nice. And there is her attempt at a popa. Again, that was a new skill, valued at an E. But I don't know if they're going to show it in the slow motion, but she also does not get credit for that. And this routine is quite choppy. All that's left is the dismount. Round off tuck double back, a little bit more of a cowboy. Pretty good landing. A little bit short or low, but she saved it well. She's not quite as exact as Shaw in her movements, and she had a bit more pauses going on. I did enjoy the style and flourish that she showed in spurts, like after her her acrobatic series. And I did like the variety. I liked the side somersaults. I liked the gym acro of the wolf jump into the chin. That was really cool. But not the same level of beam work or beautiful extension and amplitude that we saw from Qiao Ya. But the dismount was fairly well done. I would have this at a 9.55 out of a 9.8 star value. It's too bad they didn't show that popa in slow motion, so I'm going to, just to see if it was any closer than Xiao's was. So in practice, the judges are going to be looking at the end of the rotation, but they also should be looking at the beginning as well. So she starts off already a quarter turn into the rotation, and then she comes down not fully around. So she definitely didn't deserve to get credit for it. But as we'll see in this final, I don't think they were quite so strict when it came to some other elements. Possibly, allegedly. And her score is 9.562. That puts her into second behind Qiao for the moment. She counted 3 9.55s and 1 9.6. And next is our all-around champion from this event, Liliya Podkopayeva. And so far, she was 3 for 3. She medaled gold all-around, gold on vault, and silver on bars. Another punch front mount with a better and higher landing than Grosheva. Switch side, that's a D element. I love Podkopayeva's quality of movement. That was a very elegant way she kind of ran up the beam there. Here's her series. 2 back handsprings to her Rueda, which is a pike chin. And there's a little hop into a front aerial. She has gorgeous form in releve, or she stays on releve. Here's a punch front, wolf jump, very nice. It's a gym acro, it's also worth a 10th in bonus. There's a head spin, that's a little bit of variety. The judges are looking for level changes. They want to see the gymnast working both down on the beam, switch leap to straddle jump. There's our full spin requirement. They want to see harmony in these routines and a variation of rhythm between the faster and slower elements. Dismount round off full in. Big dismount, very well done. Just a tiny hop back. That was a gorgeous exercise from Podkopayeva. And the judges are wanting to see, per the code of points, harmonious change, like I said, between all of the element groups, in particular by interchanging gymnastic and acrobatic elements. They also want to see forward skills, backward skills, sideways skills, and skills in oblique position to the apparatus. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'd have to look it up. Her score is 9.837. I would absolutely have this at 9.85. So that puts her into the lead quite comfortably. She's the first gymnast so far to get a 10.0 star value. So I guess an oblique position refers to a twisting or rotational movement of the torso, which engages the obliques to maintain stability and control. So actually her little head spin, I think, would fall into that category. And that makes me really kind of doubly irritated now that she took that out of her Olympic routine. My major issue with Podkopayeva's beam routine is her acrobatic series. I just don't think the rueda is a difficult enough element. Although technically it's a C, the same as a layout step out, it's just not giving me the excitement or wow factor that I would like to see. Especially she does B plus B plus C, which is not as difficult of an acrobatic series as many of the other gymnasts in the final. But maybe I'm doing a disservice to Liliya. Maybe she just makes that skill look so easy because of how talented she is, which could very well be the case. I've never done a rueda, I've never done anything harder than a back walkover, so I can't speak from personal experience how difficult a rueda is versus a chin versus a corbett versus a layout step out. So if anybody has experience on these things and wants to sound off in the comments, please do so. Obviously, Liliya's posture is glorious. Her shoulder line and the way she moves her body and the way she works the beam is completely the best so far. And there is so much to love about Podkopayeva. I think we hold the ones that we love to an even higher standard sometimes. I know she was capable of doing even more than this. So not only would she have the beautiful extension and carriage, but then she would have the world-class difficulty in the interior of the routine as well. And her, most difficult element on the beam wouldn't be a switch side leap, you know what I mean? But when you look at what the code is asking for, Podkopayeva fulfills it perfectly. So it's not a surprise that she scored so high, and I have her high as well. Our next victim is Alexandra Marinescu. At her first Senior World Championships, she would interestingly become the Junior European Champion the next spring. So she goes from senior to junior and then back to senior. This whole time she was age ineligible, we would later find out. I love this mounting series. She goes down to the beam and she does that little scale at the beginning. It's just really great and creative. She had so much originality, a completely different style of gymnastics than her teammates. Like in this series, she does 2 back handspring to 2 layout step outs. But unfortunately, that's a pretty big break. I love the poses in this. Watch here, she'll do switch leap, split jump, staggering jump. She's the only gymnast in the final to do a 3-element gymnastics series, which is so creative. Sassone back handspring, that's the required gym macro. Beautiful full turn. Alexandra really is a glorious beam worker. There's a side somersault. She is showing the judges movements, sideways, backwards, forwards. There's another stag ring. That's a D element, and she's allowed to repeat it because it was in a different series or connection than the first one. Just the dismount. 2 back handsprings to another full in. Not nearly done as well as Podkopayeva. She landed low and had to take a hop forward. And of course she had the break on the opening series that was incredibly creative. I love that. That connection of B plus B, here it is, B plus B plus C plus C is worth 2/10 in special connection bonus. And that was true whether it was BBCC, BCBC, any connection of B and C elements, 4 of them was worth 2/10 in special connection. There's another look at the side somersault. And as I was saying, the significant deductions are on her acrobatic series and here on this dismount. Not so much the form, that would kind of be forgiven because of the difficulty. but the hop more so than the low landing. And her score is 9.737. I love Marinescu's beam work. She's such a phenomenal beamer, and taking into account the deductions in that routine, mitigating versus the difficulty and the variety, I would have her at 9.75, which is the same as 3 of the 4 judges whose scores counted. So right now she's into second place behind Podkopayeva, both for me and for the judges in 1995. So from one junior gymnast to another, there's Dominique Moceanu, also competing in her first Worlds at the age of 13 years old. There is her, that's her mount. It's a variation of the Silavash mount, but you saw at the end there, she kind of had a wonky, she didn't really finish the skill correctly. Here's her acrobatic series. She's going to do back handspring to 3 layout step outs. Nice. That's the B plus C plus C plus C. Also worth 2/10 in special connection bonus. That's supposed to be a sheep jump, which has an E rating, meaning she gets 2/10 bonus for that. But as anyone who's seen Bela Karolyi's sheep jump, that was not a true sheep jump. It's a punch front, a low landing on that as well. Wolf jump to an Emilianchik with a half turn. Yep, Shannon Miller, the commentator said, but it was never actually named for Shannon Miller, so it didn't get that E value or credit. It was just valued as an Emilianchik, which was a D. There's the full turn, switch side, and I know it's because she's short of stature, but she doesn't quite have the same presence on beam as everybody else. Here's her round off tuck double back. Nice height, good distance. She stuck the landing cold, but there was a significant cowboy on that. So this is interesting. She did not have any big breaks like we saw from Marinescu, who didn't even have that big of a break, but it was a significant visible one. What Moceanu does is has a lot of small issues. Like on this series, you can see the bent knees, the flexed feet is not the best, right? And of course that was on the general fault sheet as a deduction to possibly take. There's a switch side. I mean, that's borderline, I think, but probably creditable. And then they're going to re-show the dismount. Look at that huge cowboy, which I know also was listed as a general fault. And she lands a little bit low. That wasn't really a deduction then, but the ring jump in particular is interesting to me because in subsequent codes, that skill would be pointed out as one that has to maintain a certain threshold or look a certain way to get full credit. That wasn't the case here, so they just gave her the credit even though she did it so poorly. Her score is 9.837. I think that is way, way, way too high. That's the same score Podkopayeva got. Like, these judges are smoking crack. Oh, that's infuriating. What they didn't show in the slow motion was her mount. Let's watch that. So here's her mount. Now let's watch this. Just half turn, split, half turn, split, half turn, split. And then on this last one, look, she almost touches, it looks like her leg comes pretty close to the beam, which it's not supposed to do that. Yeah, her leg did touch the beam there. That could have been treated as a full fall, I think, or at least a 2 or 3/10 of a point deduction. She's not supposed to do that, obviously. And the judges completely ignored it. That's insane to me. And it was visible in real time, so it's not like it's just something they missed. I would score this at, honestly, it's like you don't want to go too low because then you're just like... It looks like you have it out for somebody, right? And the scores in 1995 were generally pretty high if you start out of a 10, which she did, unless you had like a lot of mistakes. And again, she had no real visible deductions. That's when we get to, there are 2 kinds of deductions in gymnastics. There are the execution deductions, which would be a balance check or a step on a dismount. And then there are built-in deductions like the bent knees on her layout step outs or the flexed feet or the lack of hitting 180 degrees on a switch leap. That is just how the gymnast does those skills that also happen to merit a deduction based on the code of points. The executions were the major deductions back in 1995, although the judges certainly would take deductions for built-in things at their discretion or when they felt like it or when they needed to achieve a certain result. Whatever the reasons, those deductions would be there for them to take if they wanted to. So in assessing Moceanu's routine, I feel like a 9.6 is about where I want to put her. I feel like that might be too low comparatively, but it feels correct, honestly, considering she hit her beam on her mount when she wasn't supposed to with her leg. So I'm standing by it. 9.6. Don't come for me. Or actually do come for me because obviously I backed it up, I think. And next is a huge favorite for this final, Mo Huilan. She was the star of preliminaries, qualifying for all 4 individual events and first into the all-around. But in the all-around final, she started on beam. She had a beautiful routine going until the dismount. She sat it down. As Kathy Johnson infamously said, this should be your world all-around champion, and it's gone. And it was so true. It was devastating. I love that mount, ending in a one-arm handstand. Here's her gym acro. She's going to do back handspring to a split jump. Nicely done. Front aerial. She does for one of her required C value parts. Full turn. Also a requirement, as we know, Sassone to staggering jump. And here is her gymnastics or her acrobatic series round off layout. Very nice. Shades of Lashonova. Beautiful height and stretched body. Switch leap. Another staggering jump. And then into an Emilianchik. Very nice. That's another gym acro series. It was gym plus acro plus gym. Very, very nice. So this is a very well-composed, intelligently designed routine. Just the dismount, round off back handspring, tuck double back, little low and kind of a hunched over landing there. But no cowboy. Absolutely fantastic routine. Really the class of the final. Although, personally, I don't think her beam routine is quite as good as some people seem to think it is. I don't think it's on, Yang Bo level or even Li, but it's a very, very nice routine. Look at this layout. 2 feet, but you see there's a little bit of a leg separation, so that would be a built-in deduction that, of course, they did not take in 1995. But beautiful flexibility on that switch leap into the staggering, into this Emilianchik. That's Emilianchik in quotation marks, by the way. And that tuck double back, that's going to be the major execution deduction, is that she landed all slouched over forwards. So the judges have her at 9.9. I would have this at 9.9 as well, putting her into the lead over, for the judges, Podkopayeva and Moceanu, for any rational person with eyes, over just Podkopayeva. And here's Shannon Miller. She is the reigning balance beam champion at Worlds. She won in Brisbane the preceding year. And this routine is interesting because it's only planned to start out of a 9.9. I think she was dealing with injury right here at this time. So there's going to be switch leap to Emilianchik, which C plus D, or 2/10 in special connection. And then she does some rollout skills. So gainer layout, and she's trying to hold that in an arabesque. Very cool, but not very difficult, only a C value. Her acrobatic series, back handspring, layout, step out, B plus C, which is worth 1/10 in special connection bonus. Switch sleep wolf jump. That's a gymnastics series worth 1/10 in special connection. And here's the Miller. See, she came down a little bit abruptly from that. And again, it was never in the code of points, so she does not get... I don't know what she thought she was going to get for it, but she doesn't get anything for it. It's just counted as another Emelianchik, so it's just another D skill. Dismount, round off, full in. Very nice. A little bit low, but she saved it quite nicely. So the composition of this routine is very interesting in terms of bonus. So she has more than enough connection bonus for those 3/10. It's the additional D and E elements where she gets into trouble. Here's that gainer layout step out, which she tries to end in an arabesque, but she probably doesn't hold it as long as she was intending to. So there are 2 D skills required in event finals, which she does 2 Emelianchiks, one of which she's trying to do a Miller. So if she thinks it's a Miller, that's an E element. So she wouldn't have a second D, so she would have to count that Miller as a D anyway. So the only bonus she would be getting for additional D and E elements would be the dismount, the full in. That would be worth 2/10. So this routine was designed to start out of a 9.9, which makes no sense. I don't know. This is the same judging camp that thought, the Miller was in the code of points for multiple years when it never was. So I'm not sure their discretion is exactly the best. She gets a 9.762 out of a 9.9 start value, which is incredibly high. It would have been enough for silver had she started out of a 10. So I'm really trying to get down to the bottom of a few things, honestly. So Shannon Miller, here it says her score was 9.762, but her final score ended up being 9.737. So I'm not sure if this was something that was changed later or if this graphic is just wrong, but that's bizarre and interesting. For Shannon, this gainer layout that she's trying to do to scale, although I don't see it in the code, it may very well have been in an addendum somewhere as a D element, and that's what she was doing in hopes of getting a 10.0 start value. But if she was trying to do that, it did not get credited most likely. I think she started out of a 9.9. The third option is she was credited for that and she started out of a 10, but they just came up with some deductions to get her down to 9.762 or 9.737. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure she started out at 9.9, and I would have this routine at 9.7. I think this was a very good routine for Shannon considering her injury, and even if she was 100% healthy, it was a pretty good effort, except from compositional things and not starting out of a 10. She did have a slight little issue on that gainer layout and a little bit of a deduction on the landing, and other than that, there weren't really any execution deductions. There were just some things here and there. And at this point, I'd be ranking her to Marinescu, who I had 9.75. And I want to reward Marinescu's creativity, originality, and difficulty. So that's why I would have Miller mostly at 9.7 as a ranking thing more than anything else, really. Which is definitely something the judges did back then because of the whole vibes thing. It's not like you're just totaling up deductions like they're supposed to be doing now. It's more like you're using the code of points and the requirements and the list of deductions to kind of rank the gymnasts in a final or in a competition. At least that's how I treat the scoring system, and I imagine that's what the judges were doing as well at the time. Like, the code of points is kind of like an outline, really, more than a prescribed, set in stone list of deductions you must take. That's how it was in 1995. So our final gymnast is our perpetual robbed goddess, Dina Kochetkova from Russia. Let's see if she is robbed again. The next year she would go on to be the world balance beam champion in San Juan. Great strength in that mount. Beautiful polish and style from Dina. There's her eponymous full twisting back handspring through the layout step out. Beautiful. That's D plus B plus C, switch sleep to wolf jump. There's her gymnastics series worth a 10th and special connection. It's a Rolfova. Little bit short on that twist, but that's another D element. This is a sewn back handspring in her full turn. Milianchik. It's a little bit crooked coming down from that. Switch leap to another Rolfova. That connection wasn't the quickest. And what I noticed is she's not really doing a lot of moving on the beam. Just the dismount, round off tuck, double back. You see the cowboy and kind of a couple of shuffle steps back. So it was a solid routine for sure. But compositionally, there's a lack of variety in that she does multiple full twisting skills. She does an Milianchik, which I guess is just a half turn, but she does this move, her eponymous one, Kochetkova, through the layout step out. That is the most difficult and challenging acrobatic series in the final. I mean, the Rolfova is really not that it's not that cheated. It's not like it's Horkina level, but there wasn't the most amplitude in a lot of her elements. She did reach full split on her leaps that were supposed to. It didn't feel the most harmonious. She just didn't feel as polished as Podkopayeva or have the same form as Qiao or Mo. She had some creativity, but not as much as Marinescu for me. So I would have this at 9.7. And her score is 97.25. In real time, that has her finishing in 6th place. So here are our final results. We have Mo Huilan first and Dominique Moceanu and Liliya Podkopayeva tied for 2nd. And here are my results. I have gold to Mo Huilan, silver to Liliya Podkopayeva, and bronze to Alexandra Marinescu. And honestly, this has been very interesting, very illuminating, and I'm even kind of a bit surprised in the moment because I didn't know how my results would turn out when I started filming this. I thought I had an idea and it actually ended up being different. So that's been fun. So I guess if there's any kind of plus side to being an eternal procrastinator, it's that things may turn out differently in the couple of weeks when you're supposed to do something but don't. Anyway, back to the outrage. What do you guys feel about Moceanu's routine and its scoring a 9.837 with at least 4 built-in deductions that should have been taken that weren't? We had the issue on the mount. We had the form in her acrobatic series. We had the sheep jump, and then we had the dismount and the cowboy. So that's at minimum 4 built-in deductions, the majority of which were ignored because her score is still 9.837, meaning that most of the judges only took 0.15 in deductions total. And I've said, time and time again that it's not like they're just adding up deductions. But that score is supposed to be a starting point or a rough guide. And there's no way that a rough guide where there's 4 visible built-in deductions at the minimum is only worth 0.15 in deductions. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I hope so. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun filming it, even though it seems to have cost me my voice because I never talked for this long. I will see you guys in my next one. I apologize it's taken me so long to upload a video on this channel. I hope everyone has a great day. Take care. Do skórova. Bye, loves.